Hey, welcome to Lab, the podcast. So good to be back with V3 Conservatory artist and poet, Wendy Kieffer. We just said it's a great time to be a poet. How are you feeling about that?
I totally agree.
I think it is a great time. It's my favorite. I said, like, the cadence that we've built to do poetry every month now to be able to create this space. I love it. We're 161 episodes into this adventure, and I have to say I'm having the most fun, experiencing the most joy, and growing in really, really wonderful ways alongside everybody else. And I love seeing the community of people that God is weaving together. And that includes everybody listening, all of you who are a part of these conversations and our guests. God is literally putting together this tapestry that is appearing now in more form, 161 episodes in. And it's awesome. We set out intuitively knowing that conversations like this were really special, and that there was something about our moment that was so ready for conversations that point to life and beauty and are uncovering something that is enchanted, reality itself. And so it's really fun to share that conversation together and with everybody who's listening, and to do poetry as a part of that. Wendy, as you hear feedback now that we're a few episodes into adding poetry to our regular cadence, what kind of feedback are you hearing? What are people saying as they hear and start to partner with us in these conversations?
I've had such a wide range of amazing feedback. Some from people who are close to me who might have more resistance to faith and to God and to at least the God that they were taught.
Sure.
And there's been such a nice opening that I think these podcasts have created that opens the heart, softens the heart, and allows just that searching on a deeper level to engage both truth and beauty. I have a friend also, and she said she just listened to the last podcast and now she's hooked, is what she told me. Strong believer. She said, the last poem you did, the one with the church basements, She said, I've never, ever really paused and taken time to think about those spaces. You know, and I know all that ministering is going on. I know that the church is arms and feet and hands are in all those spaces, but it was so nice to really go and dive into that. So I've gotten just a wide range of positive feedback. It's fun.
Yeah, it's cool. I feel like the feedback I'm hearing is the same, that people are surprised that they are enjoying poetry. And that really, really cool, right? Mm-hmm. We were just talking about Lewis saying imagination precedes reason. It doesn't supersede it, but it does precede it. And that is reality. And so if you go back and you look at 161 episodes, you're going to hear stories from people. You're going to hear really brilliant intellectual minds who are addressing from a reasonable standpoint things that they're looking at. But I believe in the beauty and the regularity of having imagination precede and lead the way. So somebody might enjoy this conversation and find their way to another conversation, and it builds a canon. I have always said it's like a bouquet, right? You look at it and there's a little of this, a little of that, but there's something that woos you and lures you toward that bouquet. Is poetry. So
it's great.
Yeah. This year is an exciting year for V3. We have already commissioned one visual art piece, The Garden by Mary Frances Fleming. Extraordinary painting. We're so proud of it and so proud to get to partner with Mary Frances Fleming, amazing artist. And that piece is going to debut. We're going to actually hang it in a church here in Tampa. Then it's going to go to a school next. And then from there, it'll just begin to circulate. So we're so excited about that. At least 2 more unveilings of paintings will happen in 2024. We're also in the midst right now working with a composer in Toronto to write a full poetic symphony. So extraordinary. I keep saying we're going to have a full episode with Constantine, the composer, to talk about that. Just extraordinary. We're doing a symphony piece, visual art commissions. We're also creating and curating a poetry collection. So say a little bit about that project, because you're literally taking point to bring that project to completion.
Yeah. It's been really, really amazing to work on this project because we were brainstorming about vision up, vision in, vision out poems. What would that look like as a collection? And I'm sure I'm not the only artist this composer might be feeling this way as well, but you start to realize as you're diving into this that really everything has those three categories. I realized I was pulling some poems that I'd written a long time ago, writing some new ones, and just realizing that they can easily sort of click into those little spaces, some overlap. But that was really amazing, because now as I'm reading poetry, I'm engaging with different music. Because I've been training myself to look for the vision up, vision in, vision out, I'm seeing it. That pattern is in everything. And so that's been really exciting. I'm just stoked to just be a part of this coming together, and to see how different the styles that I've been engaging in over the years, how they actually still fit together, even though they're stylistically just, there's some variance. So anyway, it's been really fun. Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, and the hope is, this is what's so cool. If you go to our website, vivo.com, you'll see that Lab the Podcast is nested within this work to uncover enchanted reality. And we're doing it through our content, through our courses, through art, through immersive experiences, embodied communities. That's the work of V3. And so we wanted to, in 2024, take a pretty significant step forward to creating and curating art, which is why we have the visual commissions. It's why we have the symphony piece coming out. And it's why we hope, God willing, that every year we'll be able to release a poetry collection, and that we'll lead with that. So thank you for doing the work. We'll talk more about that and how you'll be able to access it when we'll release that book, but really, really exciting.
Very.
And you can't do it without a poet. So again, I was thinking about that, and I was just celebrating, and I've done it before, but the way God is ahead of us, we were praying for a poet. Like that's so important to the work that we're called to do, to have a poet fill that slot on the team. And the way that you've stepped into that and are now not just curating that, but participating in the podcasts, contributing poetry to our chapel services. And what I've loved is the regularity of the social media engagement. So if you don't follow Instagram and all of the social media things, find @VUVIVO, I think is the Instagram handle. You can go there, and you and Cami are working together to with pretty regularity every week, saturate and irrigate even that space with poetry. So thank you for all the work, and thank you to everybody who supports. It's us together. We say there's no way we can do this, but alone, but together. We've got a poet, and we've got people partnering with us. We've got these platforms and people working behind the scenes to share it. It's just really, really beautiful. So thank you.
That's so great. Well, the thanks is mutual. I feel like even my work as a poet has been so enriched and enhanced by everything that you've taught and shared and represent. So the thanks is mine as well.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to do it. You mentioned that pattern of VUVIVO, up and in and out.
Yeah.
What's so cool, we said it, I think, a few episodes ago, but Dr. John Seal, brilliant guy, he sent me an email one time and said, Zach, what this is it's an ontological reality. You're giving lay terms in a really accessible way to talk about what God has made. It's permeated with transcendence and incarnation and relation. And to be able to see through that lens unlocks the wonder of what we're actually participating in, which kind of brings us to the poem this month. We've said before that in our moment, there is a greater longing for transcendence, a greater longing for mystery, something beyond the immanent frame, and that that's a universal haunting. It doesn't just belong to people of faith. We're all sensing it. In the West, there was a really hard stance against that, but that stance is softening. People are finding that a purely materialist framework is insufficient for their experience and for who they are as beings. And so there's a longing for mystery. And the poem you've selected for this month touches on it, gives language to it. So tell us about the poet, tell us about the poem, and then we'll hear it.
Yeah. So, this was on my mind for a little while, just when I heard about it over the summer. They were getting ready for it. We chose In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa. This is a poem that was written by Ada Limón, who is our US Poet Laureate. And I've been following her for quite a while. So it was really exciting when I saw her get chosen for that position. And she is super accessible. She's very conversational. She's a perfect person, I think, to start with. This is why I gravitated toward her. Maybe in my coming back to poetry, just wanting that accessibility, that vulnerability that she offers. So she was asked to write a poem that would go on a space mission to Jupiter's second moon, Europa.
Mm.
And this space craft, I think it was called the Clipper, and it's 1.8 billion miles away. I think it'll get there in 2030. But they said, we want you to contribute a poet that will inscribe on the spacecraft. And they opened it up for people to send in their names, to put their names on a microchip and send it through space. And when I heard about this, I think those message in a bottle moments, or we're going to build a capsule, or they're always interesting. What do you put in there? But there was something enchanting about this idea that you're going on this journey to explore this moon, and they're particularly interested in it because they believe that it has like salt water, some kind of ocean underneath, frozen. So there's a line in the poem about water, and that's why they are going to this moon. But they're exploring that curiosity of mankind to explore. But they're bringing a poem. They're bringing a poem, this beautiful merging of science and beauty and art that I think were misaligned in the idea that they are separate, or that they're in some kind of opposition with one another. They're so compatible. There's so many times I'm working on a poem that I have to research the sunset and go into the science behind it, or research how where does the light hit the wave? And I'm always feeling like when I read about it, something scientific, I feel like I'm reading a poem. I mean, they're just very much intertwined and related and connected and compatible. So they're doing this big scientific exploration and putting this poem on board. And I loved how impractical, it's not practical. It's just so human that we're doing this, and we need a poem.
Can I interrupt really quick? I have to, because first, Poet Laureate, we have this position, right? And this is what I love. If you've read the Master and His Emissary, Ian McGilchrist's work, The Matter with Things, the idea that these things are divorced, that we don't need both and, right? Like how we go to Mars. Yes. How do we get there? How do we do that?
Yeah.
Teams of brilliant people working on the how side of that. But why would we go? And what is it that calls us and opens the heavens? And why do we see this mystery and handiwork? It's a both and so I love that you're pointing that out, and just let's not lose the significance of that. And even that idea that we live in a completely material world, we can say things like that, but even at the highest levels, we go, no, it's both, right? There's wonder and there's mystery, and that's what unlocks the great human potential to say, how do we do it? Let's go explore. So
and imagine putting like a prose, sort of answer to the why. Why we're doing this. Imagine inscribing something very dry. Yeah. Just a few words about why we did this. That's not going to be able to hold the reason why. A poem can at least have some room to carry that why. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. No, you're not interrupting. I love it. So yes, the Poet Laureate, I think we were also talking briefly about that position and why our country also feels it's really important to have a figure that represents the state, the essence, the almost the feeling and the poetic view of our country, not just policies, laws. We feel like there needs to be a position, someone to represent. How do we say the why when we need to? Yeah. Right. So I love that this poem also kind of, makes you aware of who has that position, and that our country finds great value in that. Yeah. So,
what an indication that there's an unseen mover behind animating the movement of the spheres and this beautiful music of the spheres. I love that we intuitively feel like love is animating the story. And literally that's the Christian testimony, is yes. I love Eugene Peterson on this. Said, if you look at a tree and you see a tree and you notice that it's blowing in the wind, do you say to yourself, wow, that tree is fanning the wind or fanning and creating the wind? Or do you intuitively know that there's something invisible that is moving that tree? And I think intuitively we know that that love is animating. And it's why that language of poetry connects with reality, and why we can't dispense with it. Even if we've been trained to believe that we don't need it, it's not a necessary thing. Our being says it's an essential thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. We're not machines.
No.
So, yeah, I can just dive in. I'll just read the poem. This is the one that was inscribed on this spacecraft and sent off into the great dark. In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa. Arching under the night sky, inky with black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. From Earth, we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky. The whale song, the songbird singing its call in the bough of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. And it is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water, each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. O second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small, invisible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. There's so much in this. I'll let you start because I love to hear how you kind of open up some of those things that make a poem so enchanting.
Yeah.
So we'll start there, and then I'll share some of the things that jumped out at me.
Sure. Well, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, I noticed that there is a vision up right at the beginning, right? You're looking at the black expansiveness, you're pointing, and then we go into like a vision in, we're creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty. So now I'm sort of analyzing this myself, this creaturehood, and then vision out, right? There's not a darkness that unites us. Now we're in the us. I'm looking out. So I'm seeing it in everything now. But I love when she starts. She says, "We point to the planets we know." So we have this need to comprehend. We have this need to understand. We have this need to call out and to point and to name. And that's been there from the beginning, naming the animals, naming. And so we point to the ones we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. We have dreams, we have wants, we have desires. This is what it means to be human. And even to hope that those wishes will be answered is almost a nod to prayer. From Earth, we read the sky. And this is Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. They pour forth speech, night unto night, day unto day. And so she says we read the sky as if it's an unerring book. And so she's looking for truth. This is also what it means to be human. And I think as she's thinking of what am I casting out there, there is this, how do I describe in such few words the beginnings of what it means to be human? And there is that search for truth, the expert, the evident, we want to know. And then she takes down the perspective of being here looking up, and she takes us now, there's mysteries here as well. Whale song, songbirds singing. I think that's a beautiful, no one knows really why the whales sing. There's all these hypotheses of why they sing. Is it something, is it mating? Is it something very practical? But what they've noticed is that different pods of whales that are in the same community in space, they have the same song. And when they hear a song from a different pod, they don't want to fight them. They don't want to, it's like some way of communicating or expressing. So I love that she says whale song here. It is mysterious, and it does encapsulate beauty and that enchantment that we feel even as humans. The songbird singing in the bough of a wind-shaken tree, this resiliency. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty. Even here, leaf and blossom would be our vision out, and grief and pleasure is our vision in, right? We're always looking at the world that we inhabit and at this internal landscape. This is the same kind of landscape, the internal grief, pleasure, pain, how this machine runs. And it's not the darkness that unites us. I love that line. It's not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water. So there's that nod to what they were exploring in Europa, why they're so interested. But also just, that it does represent life. Water represents life. Each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. Then she cries out to the second moon, we are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We're made of wonder, of loves, of small invisible worlds. That's that interior landscape. And then this last line of a need to call out through the dark. We have this need to cry out into the dark. And when it ends like that, I have such a strong impression that yes, if we have a need to cry out, that is because it will be received. That is because someone is listening. What is a need to cry out? What is a thirst if there is no water?
I think even as you say that, what I loved when I first read this, when you sent it my way, is how coherent it is with reality.
Yeah.
And we might even differ on an origin story or the matters of faith. I don't know all of her perspective, but here's what I do know. She's telling the truth, right? And it's beautiful to hear her being so particularly and acutely right on with truth. Even the idea that we start longing up and that there's a search for truth, there's a desire to know. These are deeply particular things about human beings as intellectual knowers and, like you said, namers. Like, there is so much that she's just quickly touching on that is bedrock truth of reality, that human beings are created species. Even that idea that we are made.
Right.
Like, beautiful. We are made. We're creatures of constant awe. I don't know if there is a truer statement about what it is to be a human.
Yeah.
Right? Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And that's something that, again, I've said I've been following her for a long time. She was raised an atheist. She is a professed atheist. And there's moments where I'll read a poem that maybe because I have a different worldview than hers, it doesn't quite land in the same way, and that's okay. She has such a beautiful sense of observation and curiosity, and like you said, touching on what is true and good and beautiful. And it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome to be able to engage with that. Even if you have a different worldview, this is so in line with everything that I believe.
Yeah.
Search for.
Isn't that cool how beauty, we've talked about this as beauty, does create a space for us where we may wrestle over truth, and it might divide us in some ways because we're like, I just don't see what you see, or when my conclusion that I reach is not the same conclusion you reach. So we can still stand here together and wonder. And there are objective realities that we can point to and go, I may not reach the same conclusion as you, but if we stand here long enough and we search far enough, right, we can't leave this space without saying that the heavens declare the glory of, right? We are made. Yeah. Well, then who made us? Right? Like, at least we can wonder together about that.
That's
I
right.
love that.
That's right. Yeah. No, and I think it's really special, like you said, that this is just something that is true and it's truly human and it's good and it's beautiful. So those are the measures.
Yeah.
You know.
I did think that it was interesting, when you trace that, like when we peer up into the heavens, we say the heavens declare the glory of God. And when you look into the dark cold of space,
Yeah.
from a Christian worldview, we peer into that and we go, there, it's not a void. We don't see a void. We see this wondrous, mysterious space that is permeated
Yeah.
with spiritual significance and meaning and being, right? We see those realities through the lens of a Christian faith. And so I caught that right away, that there's a longing for that, right? That she'll get right up to that and say, but is it darkness that I'm calling out into? And it might be now because I see in part, but there's a way of seeing that I think there's even a longing there to say, a need to call out through the dark. But the dark is not the end. There's something beyond the dark, right? And I love that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So from when you first saw this, tell me just what caught your attention right away? Was it the mystery of, like, why would we include a poem? Was that the hook, or was there a particular line that made this jump out to you?
I think that it was the hook of a moment of saying, let's just inscribe a poem onto a spacecraft. Even that is just, we're going to inscribe it on this hunk of metal and send it hurtling out into space. There's something just poetic about the idea of doing that. And something, I think, again, that represents this very human desire to know, to reach out. Even when they included the names on the microchip and then put that in the spacecraft, we want our names to be known.
Yeah.
It's so personal. We want our names to go out, not just a poem, but like, I want my name to be known by this, what's out there. Yeah. It's this crying out. And so, so I did like the way it represented those very human longings and desires. But again, the need to call out through the dark, I think that was the line that got me.
Yeah.
And just how she's just in so few words really describing the human experience. I think that's what really drew me to this poem.
Yeah. I think that's when I read that last line, the need to call out through the dark, but right before that, we too are made of wonders. Here's what jumped out to me. Again, I was kind of arrested. I don't know if it was a month ago now, when the Surgeon General report came out and said loneliness is the greatest health crisis facing the U.S. And we continue to hear it over and over again, that there's a loneliness epidemic. Yeah. And I hear it from people particularly that they're sad, and there's a persistent sadness, malaise. Yeah. And even in the midst of a lot of comfort and a lot of opportunity for people, and we see economic numbers change and they go up, they go down, all the news shifts, but there is a deep longing to be known, to have our names matter, and to call out through the dark. I am sitting here thinking, go back and read this poem, or I hope you'll read it again. And if you're listening to this conversation, or maybe you know somebody, I just want it said, that longing to be known is really deep right now. And I think we heard it in a hymn to church basements a while back, but just that the significance that here we are sitting in a circle, right? And that there's a shared human experience. If nothing else, what this did for me is to say, how wonderful that for a second we can be honest about the fact that there's something deeply, deeply, deeply in us that desires to be known. Yeah. And Martin Buber says it, right? Like, I'm not an it. I'm not a you. Mm-hmm. I am a thou. I am a creature made for constant awe. And if you're listening to this, or maybe your kids or something, we cannot any longer tolerate. And what I mean by that is the Surgeon General report coming out and saying just how acute that pain has become of loneliness. And so it's time to turn our attention. David Brooks wrote a wonderful book, and he said, listen, the gaze of our attention towards another will cause them to blossom. And I'm a yes to that. If we're seeing them as a thou, if we're seeing them as a creature of constant awe, made to call out through the dark to the one they were made by and for. We just need to tell that story over and over and over until our kids intuitively know it.
That's great. That's really great. Yeah. I agree. And I love that there's an interconnectedness to everything.
Yeah.
There wouldn't even be poetry if that wasn't true. You can't have this being like that. You can't have this. You can't have metaphors. No, it all would fall apart. But because there's so much interconnectedness, so much overlap, and you can draw what this is like this and this is like that because it's all so interconnected.
Yeah.
And she just reminds me of that in this poem.
Yeah.
How interconnected it all is.
Yeah, I think that's some of that mystery that even in praise of mystery is the poem, right?
Yeah.
And we're going through James K. Smith's book, reading Charles Taylor's book, A Secular Age, and the group that's going through it, we just had this conversation of what we lose in the immanent frame, what happens to us as creatures when there is no transcendent reality. And we said that the first three are, we lose that sense of purpose beyond, right? There's something beyond. But right on the backside of that is we lose the reality that there's a grace that's moving and permeating into reality, an unseen grace of God that's providential and at work, which if you lose that sense of mystery. Because everything is just knowable, it's mechanical, it's cause-effect, that we've erased the possibility for mystery, we've erased the possibility for something beyond. We don't believe in that providential grace of God, and it just leaves us longing for something else. But in praise of mystery, okay, well, if we're desiring to see and to tell the truth that it is this wonderful mystery, then why is it a mystery? Well, because there's an unseen grace, there's an invisible mover that's at work, and that's a beautiful gift, and it's beyond, it's other,
right? So. And yet knowable, and it knows your name. I think the name, it being known. So we want to know and we want to be known. And she covers that in this. And it's like, think about the name. I think I heard I don't know who said this, but there's 3 deaths you die. You die yourself. The person who speaks your name, the last person who speaks your name dies. And then the day your name is no longer remembered on in a written form of any kind. Those are the 3 ways that you die. And I thought that's really interesting about being known, that our names are inscribed on the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
That there's this thing of like, I am so known, and that will never cease.
Yeah.
That one death, second death, third death, that's not the Christian reality or experience, because my name is on the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
It's intimate, it's personal. It's not even on a microchip on a spaceship. It's on the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
And that is a poetic way of describing something that goes beyond our understanding a bit. But it is, the poetry can hold that understanding, and we understand what that means. It's intimate. It's forever. It is personal. And we are known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a beautiful place to leave it. I think that's so good. And for everybody who's listening, what a wonderful thing. Sometimes it's fun to look at where these conversations land and what part of the world people are listening. But my hope is, in hearing you say that tonight, after hearing this episode, that somebody finds that deep peace, right? I will lie down and sleep in peace, because there is a forever sense that I am known, and that I can know the God who I was made by and for, and that I don't have to earn that position. That's the reality. That's our starting point. That's a wonderful place.
So good.
Yeah. Would you read it again? I love this part that we get to just go out by hearing the poem again. And so now, having kind of walked through it together, take us through it again, and we'll just leave it at that.
Sounds good. In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa. Arching under the night sky, inky, with black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. From Earth we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky. The whale song, the songbird singing its call in the bough of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. And it is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water, each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. O second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small invisible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark.